Welcome to Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard. I'm your host, Michelle Berard, founder and CEO of Michelle A. Berard LLC and Urban Book Editor. And I'm very happy to share this hour with you, where we examine all those places where spirit meets life and the joys and challenges that may bring. You guys know I like to start by thanking Ms. Beverly Black and Tribe Family Channel for helping me create this space for us. Tribe Family Channel is home to an assortment of thought-provoking shows that explore life, spirit, business, and culture, including The Woman at the Well, hosted by Miss Beverly Black herself. Somewhere in the Middle was born on Tribe Family Channel, and though we've grown onto our own platform, we are ever grateful and loyal to our roots. To paraphrase an African proverb, we are here only because we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. I want to say thank you to my guest on the February 7th show, inspirational speaker and author Tawana Williams. You can connect with Tawana on social media. If you missed that show, make sure you listen to the replay. You can find our complete show archives, including the February 7th show, at thesomewhereinthemiddlepodcast.com. I also want to shout out Bruce George of the Genius is Common movement, which encourages all of us to embrace our inner genius and share it with the world. This is a really important message, and I hope that you'll share it with the youth. But this message is not just for the youth. Sometimes we adults need to be reminded that the world needs our genius. Learn more about the Genius is Common movement at www.geniusiscommon.com. I am really pleased to introduce this week's guest. Darrian Tanner is currently an 11th year secondary education English teacher and a second year instructional mentor in the state of Florida. She was born and raised in East St. Louis, Illinois, and this is where her love for education truly began, as she was inspired by both her teachers and her aunts, who were educators and administrators in the school district. Darrian graduated from the College of Education at Michigan State University with a BA in English Education and completed her teacher certification program with a year-long internship at a local high school. Throughout her years of teaching, she came across great success on the school campus, whether it was through student mentoring or the classroom experience. Darrian was presented with the Florida High Impact Teacher Award 2 years in a row because of the significant growth in her students' reading and writing state testing scores. She has a philosophy behind these results that's much bigger than a lesson plan or a special classroom assignment. And she developed a passion to share these principles with other educators. In 2016, Darrian wrote her first ebook entitled, Finally Some Answers, 50 Classroom Solutions for the Secondary Education Teacher. Her newest book, Teacher Authority in the Classroom, It's Not a Battle, It's a Bargain, was released in August of 2019. In this book, she talks about the perspective of both educators and students when it comes to understanding teacher authority in the classroom. 3 years ago, she developed a strong heart to help other educators in the areas of student behavior and engagement. As a former ambassador for Teach.org and a live and online workshop presenter, Darrian makes great efforts to reach educators and students across the world in hopes of impacting the world in an unforgettable way. So I would like to welcome Darrian Tanner to Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard. Darrian, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Well, I'm really excited to have you because you have an interesting background, and I really would love to hear all about it. So I'm going to start my interview with the two questions that I ask, and then you share with us, yes?
Yes.
Awesome. So, Darrian Tanner, who are you and how did you become who you are today?
Well, right now at this moment, I grew up in East St. Louis, Illinois, um, with my father, mother, and I have a twin sister and I have a little brother. So I grew up in East St. Louis, the city of East St. Louis, and I grew up with teachers in the family. My aunties were teachers and superintendents and so forth. They just always loved education, loved the school system in East St. Louis during that time, even though it was very had negative connotations to it being a predominantly Black city. High school with um, metal detectors and things like that. Just a lot of violence and just not a lot of good things going on in East St. Louis at the time. But the schools were great, and so just growing up with great teachers in my life and also in my family. I am now 11th year. I'm in my 11th year teaching, classroom teaching. I'm a high school English teacher here in Orlando, well, Kissimmee, Florida. And like I said, this is my 11th year. I did 9 years high school and 2 years middle school in Michigan, and I attended Michigan State University, which is where I got my teacher certification. So I identify. I'm more than a teacher, but I heavily identify with being an educator because it's a huge part of my purpose and my calling in life. So that's kind of just a little bit about me. And so a lot of the things that I experienced as a kid in East St. Louis and just in the schools is really what drove me and directs me now as an educator.
So, what kinds of things were going on in the schools? I mean, I am presuming that the violence and the metal detectors were a response to the violence in the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
was that carrying over into the schools, or were they just kind of freaking out about it?
I think they were kind of freaking out about it, and that's the interesting part about the schools, is that even though we had to go through metal detectors every single morning, I'm talking about taking shoes off. It was just not, it wasn't good because it actually happened my senior year in high school. So I had gone through high school just regularly. And then all of a sudden we combined high schools. And I think that's what happened. And so it was East St. Louis High School and then there was Lincoln High School. And so I was at Lincoln High School and they had to combine the schools and we were always rivalry. So I think that they were maybe thinking that, and so that was my 12th grade year when they had to combine. So I'm thinking that maybe they thought it was going to be violence with the students because it really was a rivalry. You really, even though it's crazy to me, but the students at Eastside really hated the students at Lincoln, and we were so competitive. And so I think that the district feared that it would be fights and things like that, and so they had to start off with. And then we also started with uniforms that year too. So that year we started out with uniforms and metal detectors inside of the high school because now we have 2,000 something kids, because again, we connected the high schools, which are both fairly large schools by themselves. And so we connected them, combined them. And I think that's probably where the fear came or just, some precautions the district decided to make thinking that it would happen. But the crazy part is I don't recall, I'm sure there may have been fights and things, but I don't recall being scared to walk the hallways. I don't recall lots of student fights or violence against the teachers. Although we walked in, and that's what inspired me because here I am in this quote unquote tough school with phenomenal teachers and learning a lot and growing. And again, this was a huge inspiration. Actually, one of my favorite teachers, was at Eastside, and she was literally right. As soon as we walked through the metal detectors, her room was the first room you would see. So I'm seeing her sit here, and we learning about Luke Langston Hughes. We learning about Shakespeare. We learning about Gwendolyn Brooks, like all of these wonderful things in literature right across from metal detectors, and so the teacher. So it proves to me that you can be in a certain neighborhood and environment. That there are some bad things that happen there. I'm sure there was smoking and drinking and things of that. But again, like I said, I was shielded from that, and I was able to focus in on education and just the sports and things of that, and the friends and things of that nature, despite the negative things that were happening. And that kind of shaped my belief that the education can really change students' lives, no matter what environment they come from, even if the school is in a bad neighborhood. That's how powerful education really is, and having teachers that care. And again, like I said, that's what really drove me to become a public school teacher. And I've always taught in the inner cities and just in the areas that were similar to East St. Louis, because it was a passion for me, and I was inspired by that piece of my life.
You know, I think it's interesting that you say you've always taught in the inner city, because there are a lot of teachers, or I perceive, you know, mind you, I perceive, I'm not going to say I know that many teachers, but, you know, it seemed to me that there were teachers who were scared to be in the inner city schools, and inner city kids are pretty much like all other kids, right?
Yeah. Yes, they are.
I mean,
Yes.
so what kinds of things, I mean, have you taught also in the suburbs, or just, I mean, are you seeing any significant differences from the suburban schools to the inner city schools?
I did middle school. It was a charter school, and so 2 years in Michigan, and I did have, it was a little bit different because these were like kids of Michigan State professors, and they were more, you know, well off students, even though it's very diverse. So it was black and white, pretty much black and white students, and so I, and they were younger, but I could tell the difference slightly. In mindset, to be honest, I saw the initial difference in their mindsets for education. So in the public school, you may see more of the beginning part of maybe, you know, the laziness maybe, or just not driven or motivated and don't see the huge value in what they're doing, versus the kids back in the suburbs, the middle school students, they kind of were taught, you know, like college is important, and their parents were able to pay for a school. Well, this wasn't a this school you didn't have to pay for, but it was extremely hard to get into. There was like a waiting list. And so, but I'm sure their parents groomed them for education. They understood the importance of it, and they were able to give them certain experiences that the students in this public school system, well, some of them, again, it varies. There are definitely exceptions to that. So not all the suburban, you know, students, or not all of them have the same mindset that I'm speaking, and not all the public school kids have the same mindset. But just generally speaking, I think that the students from the suburbs were more afforded different experiences that would kind of shape their mentality on the value of education more so than those in the public school. And so that's why they would come maybe with more skills, because their parents may put them in reading programs or took them to the library, you know, at a young age. Just the environment piece. But, you know, eventually once I start working with, and once you really get a hold of the students, they're all the same, and they have the intent. They really do want to learn, but it's just, especially in the high school level, they just been through the system of just not really experiencing real education, that it's just like, it's kind of like it beat them up, quote unquote. And then I get them in 10th grade, and they're like, okay, you know, I'm just so used to multiple choice tests, taking the test, taking those, boring class, you know, just that's the system that they come from, and that they haven't really worked. And so when I get them, I have an opposite. I operate in a different way, and I try to get, you know, I try to get them to understand that, and it eventually works, but it takes time because they just haven't been rooted in that. As to suburbs, you know, most of those students have been, you know, they've been groomed and kind of taught and given experiences to kind of prepare them for the life after high school, or just academics in general. Finances, and, you know, being able to live maybe better and better home environments, and just access to different things. I think is kind of the difference. But it takes some groundwork. It takes some work to get that mentality out of some of the public school students. But once they get there and they understand, they bloom and blossom just like any other kid.
Well, and then you mentioned that a lot of the kids may have just gone through the system in a particular way, where they were not necessarily inspired to do better or to achieve particularly. So by the time you get them, they've been kind of beat up on by the system in a way. What kinds of things do you think that they have been dealing with as far as their education before they get to you? And how is what you do different?
Okay. And it's funny because I really wish, and I always tell the story about, we have a preschool literally next door to me in my classroom. I just go out and you see the little preschoolers. And one day I was talking to the teachers, and they were looking for people to read, you know, to the little ones. And so I have a friend, well, a guy I know who has an awesome children's book out. And so I bought the book, and I said, hey, maybe I'll read this to the little ones. So we scheduled a time. I went into the preschool room. I read the book, and I was just taken aback by how inquisitive and how engaging they were. And I asked questions, and they connect. I mean, everything that you want the 10th graders to do. I saw this in these 4-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just, it was really, like today, this happened last year. I'm still talking about this experience because I'm just taken aback by just how open these kids were. And I was asking open-ended questions, and then they were just making connection with names, just everything that you would want to see kids do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm paying attention, and they were a little wiggly, but they were really paying attention. It was an amazing experience. And then I walked out after having that done. And then I didn't teach classes after that at the time. I only had morning classes, but then I'll go and walk into classrooms, or I go into my classroom the next morning, and I just think about the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, the high school students, and how at one point in time they may have been that 4-year-old, but
Mm-hmm.
now you don't see that same inquisitiveness. You don't see that same engagement and love for reading and just literature and just literacy. So in my mind, I'm like, I wonder what happened from the age 4 to 16.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always said I wanted to do a case study to kind of follow, because I don't know. And I've interviewed and I've talked to like reading teachers and elementary school teachers, just to kind of figure out where it happened. I don't know what happened. I can't really nail. I wonder, did it happen in 3rd grade? I wonder, did it happen in 4th grade? When I look at some of my students and see how they start off so unmotivated, and some of them are very, very low with fundamental skills.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because somewhere along the line in those crucial ages, again, I'm not blaming elementary school teachers at all by far, because it could have happened in middle school, or it could have happened, I don't know. But they're missing those fundamental pieces that I'm thinking that they will pick up in early elementary school. And so for whatever reason, I don't know what's happening in the classrooms. I don't know what's happening at home. Something's missing at home. I always talk about home being the most important piece. Home before school. That's my philosophy. It's important what's happening at home first. And then, so I think there are some things going on at the house, at home. And then the kids come to school, and I'm not sure if teachers aren't teaching, if they're not paying attention, if they're having things outside of school that's really affecting their ability to think, or just to take education, get a hold of education. But if it can be the standardized testing, they're tested a lot. But I've always been puzzled, especially literacy, because some of our students don't know how to read very well and don't know how to write very well.
Mm-hmm.
And as 10th graders, and this is all over, I just talked with our music teacher. She teaches music, how to read it. But she can't even get to that point because they're so low with even just reading basic, just some of the basics, some of the students. Right. So I'm like, what happened? Like, how does that happen? So I know it has to be something going on in the school system, where they're not being taught authentically. If there are some issues with classroom behavior, student behavior, teachers may not have the patience to endure that and then get to the bottom of being able to help the students. Again, home things, experiences at home, because a lot of times kids come in and, it's just trauma and just different things that they have to go through. That's very hard to negate when you're trying to learn, you're trying to get the lesson for the day. So all of those components, I think, somewhere play along in that. But when I talk about the school system, I just think that generally we just haven't really taught students how to really learn. We have just been, PowerPoint, give them notes, they figure out a way to study, give them a multiple choice test, and then keep moving. We really haven't taught students. They really haven't seen real education in a sense. And again, I'm not talking about every school and every teacher. I'm just saying, right, generally speaking, the system is just not. It's not set up to teach authentically. And we have this philosophy this year at our school. It's called read, write, talk, and solve. And so we talk about how most students are just so used to reading and writing, even though they may not know what they're reading, they can pretend to read, they can fake it that they're reading, and they can write a paragraph or something and call it a day. I'm done with the class. But we never, as a system, delved into talking and solving. And so one of the things that I do in my class is verbal. We do a lot of discussion, and I've had even parents come in and emails and things of that, parents talking about, well, my kid, I don't understand how verbal grades are grades. I don't understand why my kid is graded on being able to speak versus, because that's just the world. It's just reading and writing. Nobody thinks that learning is also vocal, being able to talk, right, being able to discuss. And my class is about 80% of that, 75% of that. And so it's interesting coming in, because I get a rep now. I've been there for 9 years. So people know, okay, you have Miss Tanner. you're going to have to talk in the class. You're going to have to discuss. And she grades on that. And you will actually take a 0 for not speaking. You know, different things.
Right.
Because they don't understand that verbal, being vocal that's learning. Talking is learning. And also solving is another issue too. Kids aren't really taught to analyze and like to look deep into things. And I see that now. And that's what we're dealing with right now today. I'm giving kids text. And I'm like, okay, what does this mean? We don't do questions in the back of the book. You know, the questions that I don't do multiple choice tests in my classroom either. Everything is writing it out, explaining it, talking it out, collaborating, you know, different things like that. And so they are not used to doing that because they were able to hide behind a multiple choice test. So all I got to do is circle A, B, C, or D. And even if I fail, at least I got through the day, and it is what it is. But when it's like, okay, there is no A, B, C, D, you got to really explain what you're doing, and you got to talk in front of a group of people. So that means you have to know what you're saying, you have to comprehend. And right now, every year at the beginning of the year, we battle. It's a constant, like, you know, fight or challenge with getting the kids to understand that I'm not letting up. You guys got to push through, and you got to do this, but they just haven't been taught. A lot of them, I have an honors class, and it's 38 of them. But now I no longer have 38 because we had to get, you know, they had to leave because that you can't have 38 kids with, you know, in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, I had 38, and I asked them all. I mean, this was an honors class, and I asked them all. I said, "How many of you guys have ever been vocal, like you had to talk in your classes?" And maybe 6 of them raised their hand.
Mm-hmm.
6 throughout.
But you know, there was a point at which the American education system basically wanted kids to sit down and shut up and just listen to the teacher.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So we're coming off of a whole generation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that started in about the 60s, I think.
Yes,
really. Because I'm telling my age when I say, you know, but, you know, I remember going to school and there was a lot of sit down and listen. It was the rare teacher that encouraged you that encouraged classroom discussion because they didn't want things to get out of hand. And they didn't want to have to calm the classroom. Everybody was talking, particularly when you were in elementary school, middle school, maybe in high school more. And I think that that's one of the challenges too, is that so many of the teachers were really taught that was how you teach. You teach through lecture as opposed to teaching through discussion and interaction, which that's a more advanced concept.
Yeah, it is.
And not conducive to large classrooms, which most of our public schools have experienced large classrooms over the years. So how do you mentioned having 38, even though you weren't supposed to at that point, they had to move some of the kids to other classes, but how do you manage that kind of interaction in a class that size? Do you break them into groups? Do you, just have one big discussion? What do you do to manage that?
I have, again, this is inside of the book that I wrote. I posted on social media. I'm heavy on social media when it comes to teacher branding and things of that nature. I have a philosophy called Rogers-Clark, the Rogers-Clark principle, and it's in reference to Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and Joe Clark from Lean On Me. And I talk about how they're both on the extreme of, you have Mr. Rogers, who has like the warmth and the friendly, encouraging type of feel to him. And then you have Mr. Clark, who also is encouraging, but he has a firmer approach to, what he's trying to do. And I talk about how I managed throughout the years to kind of grow the balance in between both. And so as far as classroom management, I've had to do that. I couldn't be Mr. Clark, and I couldn't be Mr. Clark 100%, and I couldn't be Mr. Rogers, because if you're Mr. Rogers, you're going to get taken advantage of in today's culture. And if you're Mr. Clark, you're going to get some defiant, and you just don't, you just got to be careful in how your approach. And the kids today can't take certain, rough approaches like they did in those, like in our time. Like I said, we feared we had reverential fear, respectful fear for our teachers because of parents, but that's a whole nother topic. It was just a home thing and we were just taught. But anyhow, I talk about that balance because classroom management is going to be a huge piece in being able to do that. And so I think just being direct with the students has really afforded me the opportunity to be able to see their respect for me as a teacher. from the beginning. So from the beginning, I explain what's expected in the classroom. And I also, and again, it's a fair exchange. I talk to my students, like, again, as discussion based. So I talk to my students all the time. And I think that's one of the things I talk to them. Like, we have just regular, like I'm talking to you right now, I have regular discussions with my students. And so when I go through rules, it's not like, all right, point number one on a PowerPoint, everything is about discussion. I'm like, okay, guys, what do you think? What do you think about this? We can't have cell phones. And I explain why we can't have cell phones. And anybody opposed? If you oppose, give me a reason. And we rationalize, we talk it out.
Okay.
And so I think a lot of times we have, and now they're not going to change my mind because I'm adamant. I'm like, we can't have the cell phones or whatever the policies are. But because they're older and I'm able to sit and talk with them and reason out and things are fair, they understand, okay, we get it. We understand, it makes perfect sense. So, and I've had to be firm, and I've had to show a firm side with the talkers, and also one of the biggest things about classroom management and just being able to get that class conditioned to be able to discuss and be able to do it, in the correct way, effective way. You have to be consistent and you have to follow through. So again, if you like, of course, when we start out talking, it's some things. You have talkers on the side. You have people, maybe being silly or, joking around. So then, even though I give rules before then, sometimes I have to stop and then I have to, manage and say, all right, we're not going to move on until you guys stop talking, and then we have to move you. So then I have to move you. And the one thing I do, I don't have a seating chart. I think that's another thing too that gives me a lead. Now, I don't have a seating chart because what I do is they choose the seats and I use that. That's the starting reward. So they will lose it if they do something to lose it, they will lose it versus me just say, all right, everybody sits here. This is where you're going to sit for the rest of the year. I open up giving them that option. And then if they blow it, they blow it. But they can't say it's not fair because I gave them that. So just little things like that you kind of do with the high school. You can do with middle school too, because it's like you have no one to blame. I gave you the option. It was right in everything. It's in your hand. You guys have a choice on what you're going to do with this. And so I've never done a seating chart. And so what I would do, so they sit where they want to sit and they're excited about it. So I've been able to use that as leverage whenever it's too many talkers. All right, guys, I'm going to move you because you guys, we can't discuss together. We can't. And so they're like, okay, they kind of get it together and figure it out because they don't want to move. So I just use little small principles, just little small things and strategies throughout the time. But I do address for the most part openly if something is done openly. I mean, there are sometimes I pull kids out and talk to them. But again, like I said, everything is like a big family, and we have a conversation. The kids know my expectations and they've seen what happens when you don't. And I've had to hold my ground on, all right, guys, so we're not going to listen. Then this is what I'm going to do. And so I have a strike system. Now, of course, you can go to strike 25. Kids won't, you know what I'm saying? So the strike system is not what really works. What really works is that if I get to strike 3, whatever the consequence is, I actually do.
Right.
That's what they're looking for. So you can do strike 1 and strike 2 and strike 3, but mostly my strike 3 is if we're doing discussion or we're talking and we're working together, which they love to do. The strike 3 is, all right, obviously, you guys aren't listening, and this must mean you want to do independent work, and then we're going to go independent. And they, and they like, oh man, this is, so
right.
I kind of balance that. And I hate, and I do not like to do it. I hate when they get to strike 3. And I want to give them more chances because I want this to work. But I had to just, okay, I got to show you guys that I really mean what I say. And when I did that, the one time I did that or whatever for the different classes, then they were like, okay, this is what's going to happen. And then now they get on each other about it. So now they are policing each other and I don't have to say anything. But it's just, I have to make, I have to get those rules and those policies. And also I'm huge on bullying or making fun of people. We nipped that in the bud at the very beginning. Because I want all my students to be able to talk, all the shy kids, and and I've always been able to. Even some of my kids that stutter, they love to read out loud, and the kids are just, they becoming it. It has to grow to that. I'm not saying it starts out perfect. Right. Then I don't have to tell a couple of people you need to apologize. So it doesn't start out perfect at all. It's actually a struggle sometimes. It's just struggling part sometimes, but eventually we get to that point, and I'm able to get the class that type of climate, and then we're able to. The kids are comfortable and they're able to have discussion and do the verbal quizzes and it be okay, with that. So,
well, what's funny is some of the things that you're saying, I actually attribute to being part of good parenting.
Yeah.
Because I believe that you set expectations right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what I expect of you. If I get anything other than what I expect of you, then we're going to have to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's really important for parents to talk with their children, not just at their children,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and to let the children know that they have a choice in how things go. I remember having to tell my son more than once, listen, if you do not want this reaction from me, you have all the control, because you can just do what you know you're supposed to do. And then you won't get this reaction from me. You control the situation, actually, because you already know what's going to happen when you don't do what's expected, right?
Right.
So you have a choice. And I think that children, and I think children, even small children, respond well to knowing that they have a measure of control in their lives. I think that that's part of the human nature. So it sounds like what you're really doing is just treating the kids like people.
Yes, that's true.
You're treating them like human beings, which that's all anybody wants, right? Is to be treated like a human being.
Yes. That's good. I never really, I know 100% what you're saying, but I never really thought about that. And I'm listening to you talk and I'm like, wow, I guess that is true, actually, 100% true. I agree. You would think that people would, but like you said, if you look at the way the system has changed and how you were expected to fold, put your hands in and not talk versus now, you will see that shift.
Well, your latest book is called Teacher Authority in the Classroom. It's not a battle, it's a bargain. What does that title mean? Tell us about your book.
Okay. Here's what's interesting. It means exactly what you just said.
Okay.
And so when you talk about teacher authority, and I use the word authority on purpose because a lot of times, the authority has a negative connotation to it. And so, and it's unfortunate because authority is a very awesome thing. It's a good thing to have, but I talk about in the book how, of course, slavery and racism and things like that have made authority look bad because we have those in authority, treating, other people, bad, in a negative way. And then, of course, just things that are going on with the government, kids seeing their parents do the wrong things. And so they've seen authority in the wrong light. And the world it's just a universal thing. Submission, all of those words all of that has a negative connotation to when you think about the word authority. But I kind of talk about how authority means it's just you have someone that's in a position to lead so we can have structure and order. So, leadership is not a bad thing. Authority is, you need authority, you need a leader, you need someone in the classroom to lead and guide, So I kind of have to change around and help people understand that authority is not a negative thing, but that's why I kept teacher authority in the classroom as the title. But the it's not a battle, it's a bargain. Actually, is exactly what you said about agreement. So I had someone I consider a brother of mine. He's really good with literature and just words and language, and he was sort of helping me come up with a title for the book. And as I was explaining to him what I really wanted to have, I was just I couldn't figure out the title. It was just one of those things where it's like, okay, that's it. That I just couldn't figure it out. So he got on the phone. He was kind of helping me as I'm explaining the purpose and the intent. He said, "Why you keep saying that it's a battle, it's a struggle. Classroom management is a struggle. It's hard." He was like, "Is it a battle for you?" And I said, "No, it's not a battle. It's not hard." He said, "Well, don't put that on the teachers. So don't even introduce it as a challenge. Introduce it as something how you see it." And then he said, "Let's do a play on words." So he took battle, and he was like, "Actually, it's not a battle. It's a bargain." Because that's what you're talking about. When you're talking about working with the kids, you're talking about getting an agreement with them. Like you guys agreed on, what's going on. Again, if the cell phone goes away, then you'll be able to learn. If the cell phone goes, so you're coming up to the kids not with just, hey, no cell phones, no this, you can't do this, you can't do that. But you're coming to them with an agreement. Let's make an agreement. You do this, I'll do this, and we both win. So that's the whole philosophy behind it. And as you said, I'm treating them like people. Because people, we agree. This is becoming, when we deal with people, it's like an agreement we're making with each other about whatever the purpose is or whatever we're trying to accomplish. So that's what the book is all about. Once of course I go into details about certain things and certain principles. But that's what it's about. Just stop for teachers to stop seeing beforehand, just seeing classroom management or just student misbehavior as a negative thing. Oh, it's just going to be a battle. It's just going to be a struggle. I'm not going to be able to do this. And start thinking about and looking at the kids as your enemies, in the sense that you're battling with them, but seeing, okay, wait a minute, I don't have to battle with the kids. Let me see if I can bargain with them. Let me see if I can reason with them, and not reason as in letting them have their way, but reason.
Right.
Both of us, both of us, will get what we're trying to accomplish. As a teacher, I'm going to see you succeed, and I'm going to see you learn. And as a student, you're going to succeed, and you're going to learn, and you're going to, pass the course. You're just going to be learning things you need to learn. Both of us can come out at the end with something. And so that's where the bargain came in regards to agreement. So that's the philosophy behind the book, in a nutshell.
You mentioned something that made me wonder.
Mm-hmm.
And it was teachers feeling like they've got a battle, or like the students are their enemy. And
Mm-hmm.
you hear the same thing related to policing,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in predominantly Black and brown neighborhoods.
Uh-huh.
And I wonder how much of that is, again, this generation, in my opinion, has a different level of assertiveness, self-awareness and self-assertiveness and
Mm-hmm.
self-pride
Mm-hmm. Yes.
in who they are as individuals and as a group.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if what we're not seeing is some generational conflict
Mm-hmm.
that we just don't understand. And I'm lumping myself in that because of the age group. I don't teach kids, but I remember just thinking, why is everybody so mad at all these kids all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they talk so bad about the millennials and this, that, and the other. Like, these kids are not doing anything different than what we did 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But they express themselves differently. And they express themselves much more assertively, I think, than we did. And I mean, and I'm assuming we're close in age. I don't know for sure, but that's what I feel like is happening. And I'm wondering if we're seeing similar type things almost with other authority groups like the police, that there's not an understanding that this is a different generation, and they're not going to entertain things the same way because they communicate differently. The technology is different. The world is a different place. And to some extent, both sides have to, like you said, come to an agreement on how they're going to build community and how they're going to work together. Is that something that you're experiencing in the schools in particular? Are you seeing it in other areas that overlap?
Oh, yes, for sure. And it's interesting that you mentioned that as well, because I talk about, his name is Officer Norman. I saw him on Instagram, and he's a white police officer. And it's been years, but around the time when we had, even though there's police brutality still going on, but around the time where it's really getting heavy, in the media, he comes out. He's I want to say he's in South Carolina. He's somewhere stationed, but he works it's a predominantly Black city that he works in. He may even live there. So he's a white police officer, and his whole brand is that he goes into the community, and it's not for show. I mean, he's doing this he's showing on purpose because he's trying to change the narrative. Mm-hmm. So this is something he's been doing even before there was an Instagram. So he doesn't do things for show, but anyhow, he goes to visit people. It's almost like he has his own TV show on Instagram, because it's a community of people he meet. He goes and visits them every day. He's it's like we know him personally. And it's a Black community. It's an older couple. It's a man that just turned 100 years old. Wow. There are kids so it's like a community of people he go and visit. He has a breakfast club, 3 of them that he takes to breakfast almost every morning. So he gets into their lives, and we're able to see how their lives and their growth and just what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, the good things they're doing, just their daily life in the inner city. Mm-hmm. And it changes, and it's like this white police officer. And they're so comfortable around. It's like it's no color. He just goes and he talks, he gives gifts, and they jump on him. They love you and all types of things you see. And it changes it changed my mind. And I talk about in the book how I even as a Black woman, I felt a little bit uneasy around white male police officers. I haven't been pulled over but maybe once or twice, but still I was thinking that if I get pulled over by a white cop, male cop, I'm even going to be a little uneasy. I'm just like, oh my gosh, so I got to deal with this and what's going on. And of course, because of the media, just different things that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw Officer Norman's page and I follow it and I look, I'm look forward to seeing some of the things that was going on with the characters and with the people and what's happening with him. He just got married and he married a Black woman and they just bought a house. So it's interesting. He even married. He ended up marrying because of people. Not that he had to, but he's so engrossed in the community. He has a Black woman and his wife. His mom, who is white, she goes out just like him. It's like nobody sees color at all. As far as like physically, like it's just okay. It's a normal thing, which is the way it should have been. Right. But anyhow, me seeing him, I put that in the book as a way of changing, the mindset of authority. And like I said, it's so interesting that you talked about police officers because I did that specifically to prove that point that, again, the kids have a negative connotation to authority because of what we see in media. But then we can change the narrative by being, by doing the opposite and portraying that it doesn't have to be that way. The authority can be good authority. People can be good and authority is a good thing. Like you don't have to see police officers, as racist per se. If you're seeing examples like Officer Norman, there are Officer Normans out there. Right. So I specifically talk about that for that reason, because we do see it everywhere else. We do see the disrespect, and I call it disrespect because the kids are, even though they have a story, they're disrespectful, too. And even we have police officers on our campus. And I was just talking about this a week ago. We have the police officers on our campus. Now, one is white and one is Hispanic. And I can kind of see where the students don't take them seriously at all. Like the students aren't afraid of them, and they are, they're the police officers. And so in my day, we sitting still at a police officer. He walks in, because he has a gun. Oh my gosh, I'm going to do whatever whatever he says. Since that was our philosophy. These kids today, they don't care who they like. They'll go back and forth with them and different, because they know that ultimately nothing can happen. They can't do anything. So the kids have a different mindset. So I see that in the school with the police officers, and I've heard stories in the past with security guards and nurses and the principal, all of the authority have, even when district comes in to observe, we have someone from district. That means high up there. And so they come in to observe the teacher. The teacher's so nervous. The kids know, they looking at them, they don't care. They're going to do whatever, using profanity. I just saw, I had a teacher who teaches a class, and he had someone from district, and the kids were disrespectful to her. They didn't care who she was, where was she from, just different things like that. So I see it spill over. And it's not just the school, it's in the society. And older people, I don't see the same respect for the elderly that I used to see. I don't see the same respect for just women. Sometimes people would just respect women or girls. It's a girl, it's a woman. Right. Let's care for her. Let's make sure she's okay. I just saw a video this morning going on Instagram. So it's a cultural thing, and it just so happened to get into the school because it's a cultural platform. So
right, of course.
So yeah, I've definitely seen the trend. So I know that's why I don't take it to heart, like, because I know it may not necessarily be personal. I deal with it, but I know that if they're coming in a certain way, it's just not with the teachers. It may be with their parents, it may be with the police officers, it's with the president of the United States, just different things that they see and challenges they have with authority, or just older people, or just those in leadership positions. They have a different perspective. Some good things and some things that are not good, but they definitely it's a different culture, it's a different generation today.
So if you had just 3 tips to give to a new teacher coming in, somebody straight out of school, just finished they're bright and shiny and new, like a new penny, about to go into their first classroom on their own. What would you recommend to them, particularly going into middle school or high school? Give them 3 tips to how they can establish that relationship with the kids and make their classroom a more productive environment.
Okay. Well, the first thing I say is just to have the confidence in who they are as educators and just the journey they travel to get there. Before anything else, educators just have to find themselves valuable, and just they have to know that they have a huge part to play. In first and foremost, they have to know that, like anybody coming in, you have to know that you can do great things with the students and that you have a lot to offer as an educator. That's the first thing I say. And so that all involves self-care and taking care of yourself. But before anything, and like I said, every day, sometimes I have to reflect on my journey, that I can do this. I'm made for this. I can be, a blessing to these students. And I love my kids, and I love, this is what I was, want to do, not even born to do. This is where I am. This is a season. I can do this. I have a vital part. I'm important. That's what I am important. That's the first thing for teachers that they need to understand with themselves. Second, I would just try to get a hold of being able to authentically educate the students and know what that really means and what that really looks like, and aim for that, even though it's going to be some bumps on the road or it's just going to be some challenges. There's sometimes you are going to be systematic, and there are times you have to go with the system on certain things. But if the educator can understand and get a glimpse of what real education is and fight every day as far as with their lesson plans and just structure and creating things to be able to authentically educate their students, because they know that they're doing the best service they can do. They're doing great things for their students if they're able to really educate them. So if they can get a grasp of what really education really means and how to really educate, which is a learning process, but it can be done in the first year. I would say that'd be the second thing. So outside of just having confidence in themselves and what they can offer, understanding what education is so they can fully prepare their students and really get the most out of their students, and for the students to get the most out of them. Like I said, it's an agreement. The third thing I would say is consistency and being persistent. I'm going to always talk about that balance with Mr. Rogers and Mr. Clark as far as the kind of personality or the kind of the person, again, not making you have to be, because I'm not a funny, bubbly person. That's just not me. And I've always felt like since I was quiet, I may not be that great teacher because I'm not, I'm not expressive and loud and funny. But when I understood that within my own personality that I needed to be, I have to have a firm side. That's one thing I want teachers to understand. There's a point where you have to be okay with, getting a bit firm with your students about not strict, but firm, just a bit tougher, and it can't be moved on certain things that's going to be helpful for your students, like their behavior or just their laziness, or giving them that push and the motivation. That is good to have both the firm side and the warm side. So somewhere within whatever personality you have, whatever style you have, just somewhere in there, kind of mix up that firmness with that warmth, and you think you'll do pretty good with discipline things, or just do pretty good with your relationship with your students. So those are the three things I'll kind of share with teachers for their beginning days.
That's awesome. So Darrian, how can people connect with you? Can they find you on social media, and how can they get your book?
Okay. Yes, I am on Instagram as Teach Miss Tanner. So that's TEACH Miss MS Tanner, TANNER. And so I'm heavy on there with the messages and the DMs, and I stay pretty consistent, and I connect with and network with teachers, many teachers on that platform. Also, I have a website, www.amentorforteachers. So that's the letter A, mentor, MENTOR, the number 4 teachers.com. So again, www.amentorforteachers.com. And also that's my email address as well if you want to reach me there, at a mentor for teachers at gmail.com. And the book can be found on the website at www.amentorforteachers.com. You can go there, or if you're on Instagram, it's in my profile. You can just click on the link in my profile. I mean, it will direct you right there for the purchase of the book. So that's a way to get the book and get access to me. And those are the avenues to take.
Awesome. So guys, make sure you reach out to Darrian Tanner, especially all you educators out there. I know that you are all working on your craft, working on your classroom management, you're increasing your skills and so forth, and networking with other teachers. Reach out to Darrian at Instagram, Teach Ms. Tanner, TEACHMSTANNER, on her website, a mentorforteachers.com, AMENTOR, the number 4, TEACHERS.com. And you can get her at her email address, a mentorforteachers@gmail.com. Darrian, thank you so much for being on Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. I truly appreciate it.
Next up, our good friend Julia Black will be joining me for True Talk. I know building a website can be intimidating, but you need a place where your audience can connect with you. Instead of fighting with technology, try the easiest, most flexible website builder available. With templates for all types of websites, ranging from landing pages to e-commerce, Urban Book Editor's platform makes creating an author website quick and easy. Just add a section, upload your photos and videos, type your text, and you're in business. It couldn't be easier. And if you sign up for an annual plan, you can get 10% off the first year. Just use discount code FIRSTYEAR. That's 1STYEAR. The number 1 STYEAR in all caps. Take advantage of the 14-day free trial. No credit card is needed. Visit urbanbookeditor.com and select Create Your Author Website from the menu bar at the top of the page. No more struggling with technology. No more paying a small fortune to developers. Create beautiful websites without learning to code. Spend more time writing and less time worrying about your website. Just go to urbanbookeditor.com and select Create Your Author Website. You'll see how easy it is to build a great website to showcase your work. Go to urbanbookeditor.com and select Create Your Author Website today. So I'd like to welcome Julia Black to True Talk. Hey, Julia.
Hey, Michelle.
Wow, we have had a little bit of a discussion here about this concept of how people deal with things when, well, things aren't going so well. You know, the problem solving aspect or the thinking through aspect. And that can be a challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I'm finding with a lot of people is that things can be challenging, and there's a focus on kind of complaining, or it becomes a almost a situation where, oh, well, things are never going to change and my life is so terrible, and it's easy to kind of spin out of control without actually trying to move to focusing on solving the actual problem. And different ways to solve the problem. So even if someone complains to me about something that's happening and I go, yeah, I can see how that would be frustrating, but here are some ways to solve it, or here are some suggestions, that here are some things that we can do. The answer is always, oh, but it's not going to help anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm just, you know, and they just focus on complaining all the time without trying to fix it. And that creates a life that can be very frustrating and depressing.
Well, yeah, it only reinforces whatever the challenges are if you kind of have an attitude like this is, and I think those are key words. Oh, it's always happens. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, and I fall into it too. Everybody does sometimes.
Oh, everybody does.
You know, we all do, mm-hmm. especially when we're extremely frustrated or aggravated. But those keywords always or never, things mm-hmm. like that. Nothing is always. Nothing right. is never. Right. And so when we're using those words, that's usually when we're feeling the most victimized or mm-hmm. the most powerless and the most frustrated. And we're not really in a productive, you know, kind of a productive place. Because, you know, there's room for bitching, right?
Oh, yeah. No, because things happen. We're all going to bitch about it. Like that's normal. That's to be expected. It's when you refuse to move on and try and fix how you're feeling about it or fix the problem, that makes it unproductive, right? So if I'm talking to somebody and they're complaining about something and I try and start solving it and the answer is there's no point, and you're stuck in the, well, my life is always going to be terrible, or the situation is never going to change, and there's no point, that's just going to be a waste of time, there's no point. It's like, no, you can, even if you can't solve the problem, there are ways that you can fix the way that you're looking at it, or there are ways that you can reframe the situation so that it's not quite so difficult, right?
And usually it's overwhelm. It's overwhelm more than anything else. We're feeling agitated because we don't feel like we have power in the situation, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I don't want it to sound like we're kind of saying people don't have a right to bitch. Everybody has a right to complain, to the extent that we are also trying to solve.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, there are always going to be things that happen that upset us, that we have, that's always going to happen. It's not like we go through life thinking, oh, well, everything is wonderful and nothing is terrible. It doesn't work that way. But that doesn't mean that we spend so much time bitching about it that we start to spin, or that we start to feel trapped in our situation, and we fixate on it so much that it feels like it's nothing, that nothing's ever going to change. Like we're caught in this cycle of unhappiness,
Well, and I am going to say this too, and this is, I'm a mom, and my kids like to complain to me sometimes about things. And one of the things that's been challenging for me has been sometimes just listening and letting them get all of that out so that they can get to the point where they can. Because sometimes I know I used to do this. I talk to myself. People working computers always talk to themselves, right? And I don't know why we do it. Probably because we're around inanimate objects so much of the day. But, working in computers for all those years, what it really did was I talked to myself constantly. People thought I was a lunatic, I'm sure. But that talking is part of that process, I think, of starting to work through it, because you really kind of start digging into how you're feeling about it, and what I think your spirit is trying to give you in terms of information and tools to start the problem solving process. So from the other side of it is you have to kind of be willing to, hopefully you have people who are willing to listen to some extent as well while you work yourself toward that point. And
it doesn't have to be something that you talk through either. I mean, sometimes I want to talk through it, but a lot of times all I need is a journal. But we've talked about this before. I love journaling. I'm a fan of journaling. I think it really, the interaction of you and the journal, and it's just you solving the problem and figuring things out and sharing your feelings and knowing that you are listening to yourself. And like, for me, trying to put a word to how I'm feeling is a big step in me being able to get through it. Because it moves beyond just being unhappy that something is happening. It's helping me pinpoint what in particular is bothering me about it. And then once I know that, then I can move on, and it's easier for me to get to the problem solving part.
But the key is whether you talk through it, or you write through it, or you sing through it, or you dance through whatever your way is to get through what I would call the complaint phase, and get into the resolution phase. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, but that is a part of the process, I think, for everybody. So
Yeah.
with, I don't know. I think that's been one of my challenges, like I said, is to listen. And hopefully there are people out there who recognize that sometimes their role is just to listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So if someone is having a challenge right now and they're thinking about ways that, they can address these challenges, what kinds of things would you recommend? What are maybe 3 or 4 things that you might recommend to them?
I would say absolutely complain and bitch about it. Absolutely do that. But work to find out, but get to the point where you're ready to work through it and pinpoint the emotion and the thing that's really bugging you about it. And once you do that, then you can actually move past it. And then 2, start devising a plan to help fix your circumstances. Whether or not you can fix the actual problem, there are plenty of things that you can do to help you feel better about what's happening. Whether that, if you hate your job or the people at your job are toxic, or, there's a structure at work that you don't like, whatever that is. Even if you can't fix that, then start making a plan and go, okay, I'm gonna revise my resume. And once I do that, then I can start applying and I can see what other jobs are out there. And if and if it's something that's family related or it's something that is friends related, then find other ways, find things that you can do that even indirectly can help you plan around it, because that, I think you said before, it gives you a little bit more control, and it makes you feel like you're not stuck. Because I think when things go wrong, particularly if we never move past the kind of bitching phase, it can be very, very easy to feel stuck and feel like you're not going anywhere. And that further helps you feel more like a victim and like things aren't going to change. So if you can start planning and changing little things, then it will be easier. You'll just feel better about the circumstance. You can see that things are moving, even if they're not moving about the actual issue. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally.
And then honestly, kind of spoil yourself and do those things that you don't do very well because you're too stressed out, right? So like find ways to appreciate kind of the good that is there, or find things to do that are going to make you feel better, right? So for me, I always really, really love going to the beach. So if I can plan if I'm really stressed out, if I can plan a half a day because I live far from the beach, then I can drive to the beach and I can stop and like put my toes in the sand and pay attention to how that feels and how the breeze feels on my skin, and what the smell of the ocean is and those kinds of things, and just kind of stop and be really present and mindful in kind of how wonderful things feel at that moment. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a beach related thing. I mean, if there's a dessert that you rarely give yourself, like go out and splurge on it and then spend time enjoying every bite. Or
I can give an example that's not even anything that you might consider a rarity. Just working by yourself, if you're a solopreneur or if you work remotely and you're often a little isolated, just going outside and enjoying the beauty of the sky. Or like out here, I tell you this all the time, like I actually find it is so beautiful here. Just driving on the highway and seeing the mountains in the distance just blows me away every single time I see it. And it does, if you really look at these things, even something as simple as just looking at the sky, going out on your front porch or on your balcony if you have one, or going outside and taking a quick walk and just looking at the sky, it just amazes you if you really pay attention. Like it is so beautiful. It doesn't matter if it's overcast, if it's blue skies. we live in such a beautiful world. And
Yeah.
taking a moment to appreciate that, just something as simple as that can shift things for you, and, just mentally a little bit. And
Yeah.
often clear your head to help you start with the problem solving part.
Right. Absolutely. Because I think, when you're stressed and when there, things are not going well, it's hard to get yourself out of that. But if you just take the time and go, okay, what is really going to make me feel good right now, then go do that. Get a pedicure, go for a walk.
Yeah.
Buy yourself a new purse, like go to the park, do something that is going to, that you need to do, that's going to actually make you stop and go, okay, where you can just feel kind of the good things that are happening and the good feelings, so that you can, to help you clear your head.
And the last thing I'm going to say here is just, guys, if anybody is in a very difficult or abusive type situation, definitely don't just try to reframe.
Yes.
Okay. If you are in a difficult or dangerous situation, violent situation, something like that, I encourage you to get out as fast as you can and to develop a plan. If you can't just get out the door, if you can't just walk out right now, I understand some people can't do that. Maybe their kids or different things that may make the situation more difficult, but start developing a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Start strategizing, because you are worth it. You do not have to entertain crazy. I do not believe in entertaining other people's crazy. You should not entertain other people's crazy in that regard.
Yeah. And that is really important. See if you can, try and find someone that can help you, that can keep your secret and can help you plan, and help you work through things. Because that is you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You should not stay in any kind of abusive or toxic relationship.
So with that said, our three main things that we want to give you guys to take away is definitely get your bitch on. Bitch, but move through the bitching and to the problem solving. If the situation is not one that you can just walk out of right away or jump out of quickly, make a plan. Start devising a plan to get out, start strategizing, and just bide your time, but definitely make a plan to get out and then execute your plan. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, while you're developing that plan and while you're waiting to execute your plan, definitely focus on the things in life that are still satisfying, even if it's just as simple as the sky outside. And you guys take care of yourselves, right?
Yes.
All right, Julia, thank you so much for being on True Talk.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show this week, guys. You can reach out to me online at urbanbookeditor.com or michelleberard.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram as Urban Book Editor. Send me a note. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to send in some topics you'd like us to cover on the show. Make sure you tune into the show on March 13th, when my guest will be business coach Ana Robles. You can find us twice a month on Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern at the somewhereinthemiddlepodcast.com. Let's continue the conversation. You guys be good, stay mindful, and remain prayerful. Peace and blessings, y'all.